Attempting to stop protests marking the anniversary of Hamas attacking southern Israel and Israel's retaliation strikes on October 7. Thousands of people are expected to attend protests in Sydney. However, police believe those protests will not proceed safely. Joining us with more now is Criminology Associate Professor at Bond University, Dr Terry Goldsworthy. Terry, good to see you as always. Thanks for your time. Of course, the right to protest is an important one in a democratic society, but that needs to be balanced with public safety. Police are in a tricky spot as they plan for these upcoming protests, so much so that the New South Wales Police Commissioner is taking this to the courts today.
Yeah, that's correct. They've gone to the Supreme Court to stop the protests taking place. There's two planned for the upcoming weekend. Now, the competing interests are, one is that we have a democratic right to peaceful assembly and to protest things in public if you go through the appropriate channels, which these people have done. They've submitted the relevant forms. The police commissioner, though, has concerns around the ability of these protests to go forward in a manner that's safe to the members who are protesting and also to the general public. And I think those concerns are probably quite reasonable given some of the behaviours we've seen in past, the incidents at the Sydney Opera House, etc. And I guess the base question that most people would be asking is that, is it a protest or is it a celebration of the terrorist attack that took place on October 7, which, if you're advocating, praising and encouraging the commission of a terrorist act, you may well bring yourself into scope of federal offences such as advocating terrorism and the displaying of recognised terrorist organisation symbols, etc. So I think it's problematic for the police.
You mentioned that protest permit scheme. Does that work well, do you think? Victoria, I think, is the only state not to have those protest permits in place. What options does that leave police with there in Victoria? I know the state government is under pressure to introduce those permits there, but so far have said they don't see them as necessary.
Yeah, look, this is what we call major event planning. So, where you're going to have a large mass of people coming into a certain area, it's important that you can pre-plan for that. So you need to allocate resources in terms of policing. There may be road closures. I see, the light rail in Sydney may have to close, etc., things like that if this go ahead. So part of the reason you have the permit system is that police are notified of potential protests and they can evaluate a whole bunch of risks that are surrounding these kind of incidents, such as impact on traffic, do they have the resources, is there going to be violence by the group protesting, or will be other groups come in and exact violence on them? So all of those things are useful. The other useful aspect is that when you're given this advice, and it's a 7-day notification period in New South Wales, is that you can go and speak to the protest organisers and get a feeling for what they're trying to achieve, how many people they expect and what kind of conditions the police will face. If you don't have a permit system and people are just gathering ad hoc, then it's very difficult to police, and you're really relying on intelligence sources outside of a formal application process, which I think can be an issue for police responding appropriately. So I would think Victoria Police will probably be looking at the other states and going, maybe we need to introduce a regime where people apply for permits so we know what's coming and we can prepare adequately for it.
So, Terry, as an expert in this space, do you think police have enough power at the moment to arrest and move on people who may pose a threat at these protests?
Yeah, look, I think the powers are fine. There's certain offences there. If you look at this particular protest in terms of October 7 and being the context, etc., there are serious criminal offences that will cover on in terms of advocating terrorism, displaying inappropriate symbols, etc. It's a 12-month imprisonment for displaying symbols and 7 months for advocating a terrorist act. In terms of general criminality, things like public nuisance, assaulting police and things, those offences are already on the books, and I think they can be adequate in terms of responding. Where you see the problems, I think, is in terms of police resourcing, where the police aren't ready for what explodes. And that's the concern, I think, on the weekend here. This is a highly charged event in terms of the terrorist attack on October 7, and we've had the flow on from the conflict in the Middle East since. We've seen an uptick in that in the recent days. So there is a lot of concern, I think, as to what will happen, especially if you get militant activists in amongst perhaps a peaceful protest crowd who then cause problems. And I think there's significant threats there that the police will be concerned about. So the resourcing is crucial. You must have sufficient police resources on hand to deal with the eventualities of a crowd of thousands becoming unruly and starting to attack the police. They need to defend themselves. They need to be able to ensure the safety of the wider public.
Dr Terry Goldsworthy, appreciate your insights. Thanks so much.